You are Locked On Warriors POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports San Francisco on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yo, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Locked On Warriors Postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. You may know me as the former producer for the Murph and Mac Morning Show on KMBR. And tonight, the Golden State Warriors offense continues to struggle as they fail to keep pace with the NBA's best team tonight, falling 113-95 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell have been nothing short of electric this season and continued their stellar seasons tonight as the duo combined for 48 points and 8 3-pointers. Meanwhile, the Warriors only hit 9 3-pointers as a team and shot under 33% from the field. Something has to change offensively for the Warriors if they want to get back in that win column with regularity. Tonight, we discuss how this game got away from the Dubs, Kuminga's continued development, and how to remedy these offensive woes. We'll break it all down, but first, I want to thank all of you for watching us on the Locked On Sports San Francisco YouTube channel. If you aren't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on those notifications. Never miss one of our shows. Thanks also for listening on the Locked On Warriors podcast feed, making us your first listen following these Dubs games. And make sure to check out the Locked On Warriors daily show for more in-depth coverage. Charlie Walter does a phenomenal job going in on the deep topics about the Golden State Warriors. But today, we are discussing how this game got away from the Dubs. And in this one, it's really, I mean, you look at that second quarter, you look at that start of the third quarter, and things really shifted in favor of the Cavs. I mean, the third quarter, they just went on an absolute tear out of the break. And I mean, this has been happening in recent weeks. I mean, we're so used to the Warriors in the Stephen Curry era having those monster third quarters. And instead, they're on the wrong side of this one. And this has happened a lot this season. The Warriors controlled a lot of that first quarter, the entire first quarter for the most part, about half of that second quarter. But as soon as the Cavs took that lead back in that second quarter, they never surrendered it back to the Dubs, just went away with this one. I did think the Warriors were pretty decent on their interior defense tonight. Draymond Green pretty much shut down Evan Mobley. He wasn't the guy who beat you tonight. He only had 7 points on 2 of 6 shooting from the floor, and I think that's a very good sign for the Warriors defensively. But ultimately, I mean, Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are very, very, very tough to stop. This Cavs team as a whole is pretty deep. I mean, every single guy who played any minutes, with the exception of Jalen Tyson, scored tonight. Tyson only played 4 minutes and was 0 for 1 from the field. Every other player on the Cleveland Cavaliers got a bucket tonight. This bench really chipped in. Ty Jerome, plus 12 off the bench, leading the way for bench scores with 10 points. Forever Warrior, Ty Jerome. We can borrow a phrase from the Giants for this one. And the rest of the Cavs, you know, everyone was pretty much contributing. I mean, 5 guys in double figures. Jared Allen, Dean Wade, the other D Wade. We can't ever call him that name though. He's Dean Wade, forever Dean Wade. Never shorten that first name to just D. He hasn't earned that right. And Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, obviously both in double figures as well. Jared Allen, 12 points, plus 22, plus minus. Darius Garland, plus 23, plus minus. Wade, a plus 22, plus minus. So the Cavs starters just really took it to the Warriors starters. It looked very similar, you know, very converse for the Warriors starters. Dennis Schroeder, minus 24. Andrew Wiggins, minus 20. TJD, minus 23. It just was not there for the Warriors tonight. Steph Curry, an off shooting night, 3 of 11, only 11, 3 of 11 from 3, 4 of 14 from the field, only 11 points for Steph. No free throws tonight, and it just wasn't enough offensively. I mean, you had Kuminga pitch in 18 points off the bench, and Moses Moody actually led the way in scoring for the Warriors with 19 points on 7 of 8 shooting, although a lot of that came in garbage time in the fourth quarter as this game was already out of hand, and Moses Moody just started going to work. And again, it's interesting to me that, you know, listening to Steve Kerr's pregame comments, he talked a lot about, it seemed like he was talking a lot about a core 6 guy of this team, that he's starting to shrink these minutes down to maybe 6 or 7 players and that are really going to get the majority of these minutes. Jonathan Kuminga, Dennis Schroeder, Stephen Curry, Andrew Wiggins, TJD, Draymond Green, and Brandon Pajemski seem to be kind of the guys, the horses that Steve's going to run with going forward to try and get this team a little tighter, to get their offensive sets a little bit more crisp. And they need it in a bad way right now. Buddy Hield looks miserable out there. He smoked 2 layups, just fell down and just watched the ball bounce away in one of them, and 1 for 8 from the field. Buddy has been bad Buddy in these last couple of weeks. I mean, he started out the season so hot for the Warriors, and they're terrible when he scores less than 10 points. He is a big factor for this team. The Warriors need another shooter, another guard, a perimeter player to be able to stretch this floor and make the spacing work. And when Buddy's not hitting those shots, the defense isn't really afraid of him. I mean, he's still one of the best 3-point shooters really in NBA history. He's up there in all-time threes made and things like that. Fastest guy to hit as many threes as he has in his career. But I mean, it's been an up and down year for Buddy. It's been an up and down career for Buddy. We've seen this throughout all of his stops and throughout the NBA in New Orleans, in Sacramento. He has the undeniable talent of shot making, but all this other stuff, all the other extra Buddy stuff that comes with having Buddy Hield on your team, starting to get old. You kind of realize the reason that he was available for the price tag he was at after the just unreal start to the season. But you had to figure that this was going to happen eventually. But he was going to come back down to earth. Had to regress to the mean a little bit. But tonight, one of the main things that I was watching for the Warriors offense was obviously Jonathan Kuminga. And now we did not have a show after the Suns game. And prior to that, I made a very declarative statement in my prior shows leading up to the Suns game, basically saying Jonathan Kuminga only looks his best when Steph Curry is not on the floor. He can only be a dominant scorer when Steph's not out there. He proved us wrong. He proved me wrong in that Phoenix game. He had a career-high 34 points, and Steph still was out there scoring 22 of his own. So they showed that they can play together, that they can make it work. And tonight, Jonathan Kuminga, I was really keyed in on what he was doing offensively. And this wasn't the best night for either guy. I mean, they went a combined 8 for 29 from the floor. That's not very good when your 2 best offensive players are both going 4 of 14 and 4 of 15 from the field, respectively. And Kuminga did not have a bucket from the floor in the second half. He did hit 10 of 14 free throws. That's again, you'd like to see that number just a little bit better. You want to see him around 75%. I think if he can stay around there, if he can live around that number, that he will be just fine. His free throw shooting has improved as of late. And I think that that's been another reason that this offensive breakout has continued to go the way it has for Kuminga. He also pitched in 10 boards, a steal, and a block, and 0 turnovers. I thought that was key for Kuminga, the decision-making in his continued development. We'll go deep into that a little bit later on. But in this one, I mean, big play after big play from the Cavs offense, and it just seemed like this guard duo just could not be stopped. Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, just taking it to the Warriors. In that first half, it was still manageable at halftime. I mean, less than a 10-point lead, but you just kind of felt it slipping away from the Warriors, and you could feel that the Cavs offense wasn't going to be bottled up for this whole game. And I personally did not ever at any point in this game feel that the Warriors offense was going to have enough to keep this lead and outpace the Cavs for the entirety of this game. The Warriors offense is just super clunky right now. And unless Steph is scoring, 25, 30 points a game, the Warriors really don't have a chance to keep pace with good teams in the NBA. I mean, the Cavs, one of the best offensive teams, you held them to 113 points. The defense has continued to be here for the Warriors, but you can't win games in 2024 in the NBA when you score less than 100 points. You just can't do it. You have to put the ball in the bucket. And right now, the Warriors are one of the worst teams in basketball at doing that. Another night where they're below 35% from the field. They shot just 33% from the floor and 23% from 3-point range. You are not going to win basketball games like that. This isn't the late 80s. This isn't the 90s anymore. Like you aren't winning games 95 to 88. It's just not how basketball is played. And you have to find scoring from somewhere. Somebody somewhere has to start putting the ball in the bucket. And you have a bunch of guys on this team that are just so inconsistent around Steph offensively. Andrew Wiggins had a great start to the season, especially from 3-point land. In recent weeks, he's just been not the same guy. He hasn't been as aggressive. He hasn't been getting to the rim as much. He's not making his threes. So guys are starting to sag off of him from deep a little bit again. And I mean, the Dennis Schroeder thing hasn't exactly clicked. So there's all these moving parts. What do the Warriors need to do to get this offense to click? Let's talk about that next here on the Locked On Warriors postcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy visits. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you could get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners can get 40% off your first order when you use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's rocketrx.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. Welcome back to the Locked On Warriors postcast. I am your host, Eric Triple E Engel, and today the Warriors fall 113-95 and to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're the best team in the NBA. I did not expect the Warriors to win this game the way that this thing has been going as of late, and the gravitational pull of 500 is just too damn strong. We've gone through this for the last season and a half with the Warriors. They just can't get away from that 500 number. You win a game to get back to stay over it. Like you fell back down to it. You beat the Suns, you go one game over 500, you lose the next game to the Cavs, and you fall back down. The Warriors they're painfully average. That Steph Curry said it last year towards the end of the season, and it applies still today to the team as it's constructed right now. And we've talked ad nauseum about the number one thing the Warriors can do to make this team better is go make a damn trade for a player who fits in this offense. Now, we can discuss a little later in the show about whose fault it is that Jonathan Kuminga is having a hard time getting acclimated to this Warriors team, that he's having a hard time fitting in alongside the rest of the Warriors offense. It's Steph Curry mainly and running the type of schemes that Steve Kerr likes to run. But whose fault is that? Is it Steve Kerr's? Is it Kuminga's? Is it Steph's somewhat? We'll get into all that later on. But as far as the offense as a whole operating successfully, I think this lies really at the feet of Steve Kerr to get this going. I mean, you have to figure out how to get this team flowing again. I mean, you got to start playing to some strengths and leaning in to guys that are getting better. And Kuminga and Trayce Jackson-Davis are two of those guys. And if they can continue to play good basketball, it's just going to make life easier for Steph and allow him to go do Steph Curry things. But the number one way that this team can get better is if you go make a damn trade. You go get Johnson from the Brooklyn Nets. I think that's the number one way to get better. But I don't see that really happening. I don't know if the Warriors are going to be able to ever pull the trigger on getting rid of Jonathan Kuminga. And I think that's the guy who he'd have to trade to go get a player of that caliber back. And Jonathan Kuminga, when he flashes, he looks amazing. Those 34 points that he had against Phoenix, I mean, he scored 30 plus a couple times this season, and every time that he does, it looks easy. It looks smooth. It looks effortless. He looks physically dominant, and he just has some plays that just make you just wow, just absolute jump off the couch level excitement. And the way he can jump out of the building, his speed, it's unreal. We've seen him make pretty solid steps, I think, defensively this year as well. But his number one thing that he's gotten better at is his decision making. And these things got to all continue to get better if the Warriors want to continue to win games, if they're not going to move on from Jonathan Kuminga. And as time goes on, the longer it goes, the less likely I think it is that the Warriors will trade this guy. I mean, his trade value is probably going back up as the rest of the league is seeing this guy turn into a guy who has all-star caliber potential. And he's not quite there yet. He's obviously got to continue to get better. But Jonathan Kuminga right now could go do like a Jordan Poole type move and go to a bad team and be far and away the best player on it and just own whatever team he's on, be the focal point of the offense and the centerpiece and have a team built around him. That's not what the Warriors are going to do, obviously, because you have Stephen Curry. But you got to figure out a way for this to start clicking with the rest of the Warriors offense. If you aren't going to go get another guy to bring in here, a Jimmy Butler, anybody to go be another scorer to put the ball in the hoop. That's the name of the game. If you aren't going to do that, you have to really bank on Kuminga's development. You have to feed everything you can into that, and TJD as well. I mean, TJD tonight, he had another great game. Steve Kerr said in pregame he felt like Jonathan Kuminga was really turning a corner, and like Trace Jackson Davis was taking big steps forward. He said he thinks Trace is taking a big leap forward, were the words that Steve Kerr used. Tonight, 6 offensive boards, 16 total rebounds, and 16 points for TJD. Did have a minus 23 plus minus as he was getting worked in that starting rotation with the rest of the Warriors starters against Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and the rest of the Cavs. But I felt that TJD did a decent job holding his own on the interior against another team that is much bigger than the Warriors are. Evan Mobley, Jared Allen are both dominant interior players, and Trace Jackson Davis is down there with Draymond Green trying to hold their own. And I thought that they did a decent job on the interior against these guys, just monsters, just towers for the Cleveland Cavaliers in the paint. And the Warriors, they're not a dominant team in the paint by any means, but to be able to outscore a team like this, like that has the size of the Cleveland Cavaliers, they outscored them 48-42 in the paint. And TJD is a big, big, big part of that. The rebound numbers were really valuable for the Warriors tonight. You actually out-rebounded the Cavs 67-60. If the shooting was there for the Warriors, they are right there in this game. You're going to have off shooting nights, but again, you got to find another scorer to space this floor. I mean, when you got 3 starters, right? You got Kuminga, you got TJD, you got Draymond, and you got Steph. There's still another guy out there in the starting lineup, and that guy right now is Dennis Schroeder. And Schroeder, who was having a career year offensively, as soon as he got to the Golden State Warriors, just fell off a cliff shooting-wise, and he just hasn't found the rhythm within this offense. That is another thing that I think will eventually click with time. I think Schroeder's a solid player. I think we see him get a little bit more acclimated to this offense every day. We've seen him hit, against Phoenix, he had a pretty solid game. We've seen him have some moments, but we haven't seen him be the guy who's been, who gave him 30 points earlier this year before they made the trade when Schroeder was still on the Nets. We have not seen that guy show up for the Golden State Warriors yet. And I do think that is something that will hopefully come down the road. I think Kerr is too good of a coach to let a guy like Schroeder just kind of waste away and not really utilize his talents. I think that you've got to start running high pick and roll more. I mean, it sounds really simple, but TJD did that very, very, very well last year with Chris Paul. And Dennis Schroeder's a pick and roll guy. I think you've got to organize and create with intent some pick and roll packages for both of these guys to get things going. And I, it's something that they're going to need to improve. It's a work in progress. Again, did not think the Warriors were going to come out against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have only lost 4 games all season, and continue, with another win after beating Phoenix in that amazing game on Saturday. I did not expect a win tonight, but the thing that I am troubled by, continue to be troubled by, and all of Dub Nation should be continue to be worried by, is this offensive struggle, this marred offense continuing to just be plain bad. I mean, this was, optics-wise, this game was not good. It was a hard watch for Warriors fans, miss after miss after miss, clank after clank after clank. And the Warriors got to find a way to keep scoring in the second halves of games. They have let games really slip away from them late. This one wasn't a clutch game, obviously, but again, fourth quarters, third quarters have been a problem point for the Golden State Warriors in this season, and they were so used to things being the other way. Steph Curry being the closer that he's been throughout his career, it's usually been the Warriors on the winning side of those big third quarter runs, the Curry flurry out of the half. We've all come to expect this, and it's just not been the same. Steph clearly that knee is bothering him. Draymond Green looked hobbled at the end of this one, man. He was limping around trying to stay out there on the floor, and he just did not look very good tonight. That knee looked really bad. Draymond just 1 for 10 from the floor. Defensively, I thought he was decent in the first half, and I thought that intensity waned in the second half, a sign that those knees are sore, that Draymond's, dealing with the same kind of injury management that Steph is. You got to figure out a way around that this season, because your team is built around 2 aging superstars. You have all this youth. You got to start leaning on it. And I mean, I don't know why Moses Moody is not getting run until, garbage time in the fourth quarter. He led the Warriors in scoring tonight, 19 points, 7 of 8 from the floor. And yeah, this was against the Cavs backups when they already had a massive lead. So I get that they weren't putting the clamps down on him. But Moses Moody has shown us throughout his career, all season long, this is one of the best years of his career. He needs more minutes. And I think that he is a guy who can definitely help the Warriors space the floor. Moses Moody plays winning basketball every night. He rarely makes those plays that just make you scratch your head and go, what the hell was that? Like Buddy Hield and sometimes Brandon Pajemski and all these other guys. We've seen Wiggs do it. We've seen, for sure, I've seen Jonathan Kuminga do it. Moses Moody almost never makes those head-scratching plays, a plus defender, and he can stroke it from 3 of 4 from 3 tonight. He tied Steph with 3 threes to lead the Warriors. But he only did it on 4 shots. Steph took 11 of them. So the Warriors got to figure out something to do offensively other than what they've been doing. And I think a solution to that is running more high pick and roll with Schroeder and Trace Jackson-Davis. TJD thrived in that role with Chris Paul last year. And you're seeing a little bit more of that, but I need the Warriors to go to that with intent and maybe give Steph some plays where he doesn't have to just be the primary guy, where he's not just running around all these screens. Let his knees rest. Let him get some breaks during the game without having to come out of the game by not making him put up every single shot for this Warriors team. And, have him run around like he's running like 3 miles a game. Let Steph get some rest. Let the offense run through Kuminga on occasion. Let the offense run through Schroeder and TJD in that high pick and roll. And it will free up Steph to do more of the things that Steph loves to do, which is drain that 3 ball at a much higher clip than 3 of 11. You got to continue to attack the paint if you want the perimeter shooting to open up. But again, I think the Warriors still just need to figure out another shooter, and whether that's making a trade or having, Moses Moody get some more minutes, or maybe it's Schroeder coming around with that shooting touch that we saw at the beginning of the season. Something has to change for this Warriors team. You cannot continue doing what you're doing, or this team is going to play itself right out of the playoffs and right out of the play-in. Because you're looking at the NBA standings right now, and they're tied for 10th with the Spurs. That's not very good. I mean, you don't want to be, or tied for 9th, I guess, with the Spurs, but you do not want to be tied for that last spot in the play-in with the San Antonio Spurs, with, by the way, the Phoenix Suns, who are a much more talented roster right behind you. So I think that the Warriors have a lot of work to do to reshape this offense. I think it all lies at the feet of Steve Kerr. He's got to figure out a way to make this work. He's got to figure out the rotations to make this thing work. And I really do think that Moses Moody is a big key component to this. Dennis Schroeder is a big key component to this. You can't rely on Buddy Hield. You can't. It was fun while it lasted, but you just can't rely on Buddy buckets to continue to do what he did at the beginning of the season. I think what we saw today from him is much more in line with the Buddy Hield that we have all grown to know and love. The guy who smokes 2 layups and just falls on the floor, can't handle the basketball, dumb turnovers. You take the good with the bad with a guy like Buddy Hield. That's why he was available on the free agent market at the price point that the Warriors got him at. One thing that can help the Warriors offense get out of this is if Jonathan Kuminga keeps putting up 30-point games. And I mean, tonight, that's not what we saw from Kuminga, especially in the second half when he failed to even get a shot in from the floor. But his development, we got to talk about it. We saw a lot from him on Saturday against the Suns when we didn't have a show. And tonight we kind of saw the other side of that coin. He did not look to be as demonstrative in the paint as he was against the Suns. And let's talk about it. How does Kuminga continue to grow in this offense? How is he going to fit with Steph? And who is it up to make this cohesion work and get this offense clicking? Kind of just talked about it a little bit, but just a little bit more on the Kuminga specific aspect of this on the other side of the Locked On Warriors postcast. That's what's coming up next. Welcome back to the Locked On Warriors postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, and tonight the Warriors fall 113-95 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Just checking through the comments, we got a Cavs fan in here, and they're calling our guy Kuminga a bum, man. He said he was barbecue chicken, man. Oh my, this guy Mongo clearly has not seen what Jonathan Kuminga has been doing this season. Tonight, not a great night for Kuminga. Obviously, only 18 points, and he did not hit a field goal from the floor in the second half. So Kuminga struggling, but again, I liked that he was taking the right shots. He was driving. He wasn't settling for mid-range shots. He wasn't settling for 3-pointers. he was getting to the rim. He did take 2 threes. He missed them both, but most of his shots came in the paint tonight. And Jonathan Kuminga really has been showing us that he's been much more efficient with his scoring in the paint, and that he's been a much better decision maker on when to drive, on when to go to left versus when to go right, when to pass out, all those things. Now, if guys aren't really making shots, it puts a little bit more pressure on a guy like Jonathan Kuminga to maybe try and force some things in the paint that you otherwise would have passed out of. And I think that's kind of what we saw in the second half. We just saw him pressing a little bit because the rest of this Warriors offense was just not clicking. And this is something that we're going to continue to see, but Steve Kerr needs to be able to keep Kuminga in his sorts. He needs to keep him on task, on schedule, moving towards the common goal that the Warriors offense has, which is ball movement and creating open shots. Creating that 3-point shot open for Steph is still the most essential thing for this Warriors offense. And Steph has been absolutely suffocated all season long trying to get shots up from deep. And Kuminga can be the number one guy at freeing up some of that pressure from Steph. If guys have to stay home, if Kuminga can keep getting to the rim with authority as he has been in recent games, although tonight it wasn't as effective, I think that is something that can make defenders stay home in that paint and have those rotations out to 3-point shooters be just a hair delayed, and that can create a lot of open shots for the Warriors and for guys like Steph. And if you choose to not leave Steph, then that's one less defender to help wall off Jonathan Kuminga from getting to the rim. And I mean, this guy needs to start acting like he's Giannis. That is the exact type of game I want to see him play. And I mean Giannis before he got even a sniff of a jumper, where it was all this guy's going to do is drive straight at you and say, I think I'm bigger and stronger than you. You go ahead and try and stop me. If you do, I'm going to get to the free throw line. And that's the attitude that I have seen from Kuminga in recent weeks. The free throw numbers are I think encouraging. When he's shooting, 10 to 15 free throws a game, if he's making about a 75% clip, that is going to help his game substantially. And it's going to help the Warriors because you're not going to be able to keep fouling a guy if he's making those free throws. And again, it's going to open up eventually those outside perimeter shots for guys like Steph, for guys like Schroeder, for guys like Wiggins, for guys like Moses Moody, if Kerr ever decides to play him with starters and such, and that's been the Warriors offensive system. That's been what it's been predicated around for the entire Steph Curry era. And that's not going to change just because Kuminga is starting to come into his own. It's still Steph Curry ball when the Warriors are out there. Jonathan Kuminga has to learn to fit into this. Steve Kerr has to bring him along. I'll admit, hand up, I have been too soft on Steve Kerr and have not placed enough blame at his feet for the lack of cohesion on this offense, for Jonathan Kuminga's lack of ability to play alongside Steph in effective long stretches of minutes. And I think that's partially why you see Kuminga coming off the bench, but I think that's got to change. I think you got to have Kuminga in that starting lineup with Steph, and you've got to see how this pair can work together. You've got to figure it out. Once those two, it seems like a match made in heaven. A guy who is an expert at driving to the rim, and all he's got to do is figure out when to have that kick out pass when that defense collapses. It just hasn't worked that way. It seems so like one of the simplest things to do in all of basketball, drive and kick. The Warriors just are so bad at it. They are unable to scheme anything up where you get open 3-point shots for Steph. And that's at the hands of Steve Kerr. Like, he has to figure that out. If he is, Kenny Atkinson called him the greatest coach that he's ever coached alongside in this pregame. And if Steve Kerr, the Olympic gold medal champion, the maybe potentially candidate for coach of the decade of the 2010s, if this guy he has to be, able to figure this problem out if you're going to hold him in that high regard. He has to be able to solve some of these Warriors offensive struggles if he's supposedly this phenomenal coach. And I'm not trying to dump on Steve Kerr. He's done a lot for this Warriors team. I think he's a phenomenal coach. But this is where you got to prove it. Clay's gone. Steph's aging. Draymond's aging. How do you pivot? You got to have a good coach to be able to get through this. And I think that Steve Kerr can guide the Warriors through this, but I need to see it. I need to see the how Jonathan Kuminga and Steph Curry can mesh. It seems like a match made in heaven, but I need Steve Kerr to figure it out. I need him to solve the cipher and get these two guys playing successfully on the court at the same time. It's great to be able to have Kuminga play in those non-Steph minutes and still carry the offense. And I'm not saying that really needs to dramatically change, but the minutes where they're on the court together need to look better. Absolutely needs to look better. It's about all the time that we got for you guys today. The chat was pretty active today, but we just too much time to not enough time actually on the show to get into all the comments. We'll get into more of the chat comments next time. Thank you guys all for tuning in to the Locked On Warriors postcast and tuning in for all the postcasts. We just did a Locked On 49ers just about half an hour ago, and Giants season's coming up. There's baseball off-season stuff heating up. I just went on my guy Walter Ikabalseta's show, Passion for the Pastime. That was a fun conversation with my guy Walt. So go ahead and check that out on YouTube. Of course, after you're checking out the Locked On Warriors postcast, the Locked On 49ers postcast, and everything else on the Locked On Sports San Francisco YouTube channel, make sure you're subscribed, got those notifications on, and you'll never miss a show. That's all the time that we got for you guys today. The next game, Warriors-Sixers on July, where is my brain? Sixers on Thursday, January 2nd. those J months, getting them mixed up. Dyslexia is fun, you know what I mean? So Warriors-Sixers, Thursday, January 2nd. We'll be coming to you live, as we always do, on the Locked On Warriors postcast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Peace.